Here's my article for Monday, September 16th, High at 9 News. Let me take you on a throwback way back to back in the day in the early 70s. And this is hot off the press, I might add, through a variety of news sources within the last 48 hours. Drum roll. Nixon started the war on drugs. Privately, he said pot was not particularly dangerous. Back in 1971, President Richard Nixon launched the war on drugs, a campaign that's still affecting the U.S. today. However, a newly discovered recording from March of 1973 reveals Nixon privately admitted that marijuana wasn't particularly dangerous. This recording, captured by his secret system in the White House, only recently came to light after a cannabis industry lobbyist found it while going through hours of Nixon tapes. In the recording, Nixon says, quote, "Let me say, I know nothing about marijuana. I know that it's not particularly dangerous. But on the other hand, it's the wrong signal at this time," unquote, referring to the movement to legalize marijuana. Publicly, Nixon called drug abuse public enemy number one, but in private, he questioned the harsh penalties Americans faced for marijuana-related crimes. Referring to a case where somebody received a 30-year sentence for cannabis, he said, "The penalties are ridiculous." Nixon even expressed concern over states like Texas, where people were getting 10-year sentences for marijuana offensive, calling it, quote, wrong. Despite this, he was the one who created the federal drug classification system, placing marijuana in the same category as the most dangerous substances like heroin. This decision not only fueled mass incarceration, especially among Black Americans, who are 3.6 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession, but also stifled research into its medical potential for decades. Continues to. The timing of these revelations is noteworthy, as the U.S. government is currently reconsidering marijuana's classification as a Schedule I drug. There's a proposal on the table to move it down to Schedule III, which would ease some of the restrictions surrounding its use in research. The DEA is planning a public hearing on the matter in December, because that looks like progress, following the presidential election. Interestingly, both of the major 2024 presidential candidates seem open to loosening marijuana policies, at least until you vote for them. For example, Kamala Harris has spoken out against marijuana being classified as a Schedule I drug, and Donald Trump recently acknowledged that legalizing recreational marijuana in Florida seemed inevitable. While he didn't fully endorse it, he did say, "We do not need to ruin lives and waste taxpayer dollars arresting adults with personal amounts of it on them." These comments, along with Nixon's long-buried admission, highlight how the conversation around marijuana has shifted, even among politicians once associated with tougher stances. This is Yarrow Kubrin, High at 9 News. I'd like to know what my other pundits think and feel about these new revelations that take us back 51 years.
Well, first of all, Trump did endorse it, and so just want to just say that in regards with your article. But I mean, this is not surprising at all to me, and I'm really glad that these tapes finally did come out. I wasn't necessarily shocked, but just like it's just been more of the same, and like they know that there's no problem with this, but yet they want to act like it's it's a nuclear weapon.
It wasn't on accident. Nixon and the GOP invented the scheduling system and outlawed marijuana so they could. I say this almost every fucking episode.
That's true.
They outlawed marijuana so that they could attack the civil rights movement, the Black Panthers, free speech movement, the SDS, the Weathermen, everybody who wanted the end of the Vietnam War and were trying to attack the fascist system. The GOP with Reagan and Nixon and the Bushes, etc., have been on this forever. And I'm not excusing the Democrats. The Democrats are like fascism light. It's basically the current choice we have is, want to be fisted in the ass with no lube? Or would you like, like maybe a couple fingers to start and then that whole motherfucking arm still? So the lubed up arm would be the Democrats. The lube arm would be the Republicans. Definitely need a more mature and European system wherein we have multiple parties to vote for with multiple ideas so we can maybe evolve ourselves past this tribal war of red and blue. It doesn't work. But anyway, back to Nixon. He outlawed marijuana and started the DEA, and the scheduling system was continue to erode our rights and to attack Americans who are exercising their First Amendment rights, because It is not against the law to call for an end to war. It is not against the law to call for black folks and people of color to be treated equal to white European appearing people. So they needed to find a lever to use to harm and imprison these people. The other thing they did was the CIA's Dirty Tricks Committee, along with FBI's COINTELPRO, would write letters that purported to be from these different figures to each other in order to foment war between these factions and paranoia and to keep them from working together. Because what we're actually dealing with is a class struggle. And the reason that most people don't see the class struggle, besides lack of education, is because the powers that be use our minor differences, such as race, ethnicity, and maybe even political fealty, keep the truth obfuscated that 99% of us are actually brothers and sisters, to unite to ask those at the top to begin sharing more equitably.
Oh, brothers.
So would you describe your political affiliation as more of a well-lubed butt plug, Mathieu St. Germain?
I would take an occasional finger, but you got to play with my balls at the same time or it's not going to work for me.
Oh, boy.
We just got an age gate. Amazing.
I am a psychedelic anarcho-communist. What does that mean? It means that I believe in small systems. I think that we as human beings should take care of each other as we do in families and small friendship situations. Shouldn't be so afraid when those situations grow to be, instead of a few people, maybe a couple 100,000 people. There's been enough history showing that if we all just give a little bit into the middle of the pot, there's enough for everybody.
Well, okay, that makes sense. Going back to the article, though, I mean, cool that this tape came out, but a lot of fucking good it does us now, right? He already did it. He already created the damage. And so, like, this, but I said that it's not that bad. Remember when I said that? Doesn't fucking matter at all. This is just a little bit of, I don't consider it news necessarily.
It does show the hypocrisy, though, in government.
It also, the fact that it's coming out prior to the DEA completing their process around rescheduling, descheduling, I think adds some additional fact-based data points, some momentum that might provide some additional political pressure. History is certainly about going back and reevaluating what we think we know and why we think we know it. It's also relevant in an election cycle because I think up until Donald Trump, Nixon was the highest ranked Republican president for felony convictions. And so I think that it's worth noting that, while he may be called Tricky Dick, he was not Dumb Dick, and that he understood that the things that he was putting forth were deeply flawed, deeply agendized and undisclosed, and that he used it for political advantage, but that he knew what he was doing. And so, look, the guy, nobody ever said he was stupid. And so I think when we think about the history of the DEA, the history of the scheduling, the history of where cannabis currently resides federally, this is all now very relevant. And 50 years, while it seems like a long time, in the history of the world or the history of this country is not that long. And so I hope that this goes viral. I hope it continues to be something people talk about. I hope that it makes its way into the presidential campaign and the back and forth. And I hope ultimately that the DEA takes this into consideration when it measures the political wins and decides what it's going to do after that hearing in December.
Well, I think unfortunately the fact that it's coming out 50 years later or whatever, the harm is already done, and this sucks because we have had so many people's lives who've been destroyed by someone who did something that was contrary to what admittedly their own personal beliefs are for a policy. So I don't know. I think that it's sad, and I'm sure it will become viral. But at this point, how much weight is it really gonna have?